When Hazmat gets the call, there's a lot on the line. The first response team has encountered a hazardous situation, and the community is counting on the Hazmat team to solve the problem and keep people safe. Danger is expected. Risk is guaranteed. Uncertainty is part of the job when you're on your way in. You need important questions answered, and fast. Because in an emergency situation, the more you know about the threats that are present, the better you can respond. A comprehensive threat detection solution from Ray Systems can tell you what threats are present and where they are. With the Pro-Ray Guardian software platform and a comprehensive array of personal, transportable, and survey monitors from Ray Systems, you can quickly establish a wireless threat monitoring command center at the scene and at the station. Pro-Ray Guardian gathers and integrates threat data from multiple monitors up to 2 miles away in real time. You'll see a single dynamic map interface so you know the threats your team faces as soon as they do. With optional modeling software, you can also predict where the plume will travel and how fast. That gives you the information you need to establish a safe perimeter, decide your evacuation plan, and create a response strategy. Pro-Ray Guardian also gives you the ability to share information with decision makers in other locations in real time. Plus, our products integrate with third-party devices and networks so you can work with other teams under separate command and share data for the most comprehensive view possible.
Once our hazmat rig shows up on scene, we turn our wireless mesh system on, and the crews that are already on scene, their monitors already link up to our mesh system, so we get real time on what those guys are seeing.
Wireless detection is the most important step in protecting firefighters and civilians by having somebody that's not in the IDLH atmosphere watching over them to kind of keep an eye on what's going on and alerting them to when we have some type of an emergency.
A local example for us is we had a major gas leak, and so we used it to be able to know when to shut down the highway and when to reopen it based on LEL readings we were getting on our wireless gas detection. So keeping the public safe that way, where we can keep things moving, but yet if we need to stop traffic, we can stop traffic when it's appropriate.
And really it required 2 people, one to set the monitors out and one guy to monitor the computer and receive all that information in, instead of having 4 or 5 different people cluttering the airwaves trying to send information back in and things like that. So reduces the number of people that we need, and then we can take those people and put them to mitigating the incident.
When the Hazmat team moves into action, there's a lot on the line. With Ray Systems portable wireless monitors in the field and Pro-Ray Guardian in your command center, you have critical real-time threat information at your fingertips to help you assess, neutralize, and dispose of even the most dangerous chemical, biological, and radioactive substances, so you can keep the public and your team safe. Ray Systems, because the time to know is now.
Hi, welcome to today's webcast. This is Bobby Halton from Fire Engineering, and we're very proud today to be bringing you today's webcast, The Invisible Danger, How to Utilize the Power of Wireless Gas Detection to Identify and Reduce Toxic Exposure. This is being supported and sponsored by our great friends at Ray Systems. Today's presenters will be Lisa Mork-Davis. Lisa is with America's Enhanced Safety Wireless leader, Honeywell Analytics. They are the bosses of Ray Systems. She's currently with the wireless projects at Honeywell Analytics, and she's been working in the field of gas detection since 1995. She's worked in several areas, including product marketing, sales, communications, and specializing in enhanced safety market. Lisa holds a BA in chemistry from Arizona State and a graduate diploma from Adelaide University in Australia. She resides in Scottsdale, Arizona. Along with Lisa is our great friend, Jason Crudson. Jason and I have kicked around the country for years with the Smoke Coalition and other speaking engagements, and you're going to love Jason. Jason's a battalion chief with the Special Operations Unit in Columbia, South Carolina Fire Department. Jason's the Special Operations Chief for Columbia, South Carolina, with over 19 years of experience. He also serves as the president of the FireSmoke Coalition. He has an associate's degree in Fire Service Administration, and he's the planning manager with the State Urban Search and Rescue Team. He's the team coordinator for Type 2 Collapse Search and the Regional Collapse Response in Columbia, and the planning section chief for Type 3 in the Midlands region. Jason is also the project manager and instructor for eMed Training Services. Well, today's sponsor is Ray Systems, and they're an amazing company. Ray Systems, a leading global provider of rapidly deployable, connected, intelligent gas and radiation detection systems that enable real-time safety and security to threat detection. Ray System products are used in more than 120 questions by many of the world's leading corporations and government agencies. Ray Systems offers a full line of wireless technology enabled and supported by personal, handheld, transportable, and fixed instruments designed for any scenario. Listen, after the webcast, go to raysystems.com. Seriously, there's some great stuff to look at. These are wonderful products, huge supporters, and this is critically important stuff. This is life-saving equipment that we all need to be more familiar with and be more comfortable using and using intelligently. But before we begin, a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, there are multiple application widgets that you can use. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the QA question and submit your question. We'll try to answer those questions during the Q&A portion at the end of this webcast. For additional resources have been provided for this webcast, such as a PDF of the slide deck, and it can be downloaded via the resource list widget that looks like a green folder down there at the bottom of your screen. You can expand the slide area by clicking and maximizing icon at the right top of the slide area, or by dragging the bottom right corner to enlarge. In fact, you can expand and reposition many of the components on your screen, so please feel free to arrange your desktop as you desire to give you the optimal webcast viewing experience. If you have any technical issues during the webcast, please click on the Help widget. This has a question mark on the top icon and addresses common technical issues like I can't hear it or the video is not playing. If you still need assistance, just type your issue into the Q&A widget, and a member of our crack technical team will try to jump on and support you to correct the problem. For your convenience, we'll have this presentation available on demand within 24 hours. As a reminder, everyone who registered will get a link sent to them to their email, and it will also be accessible from our homepage at fireengineering.com. Hey, now I'm going to get you right in touch with Lisa and Jason. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you, and they're going to bring this presentation, The Invisible Dangers, How to Utilize the Power of Wireless Gas Detection and Identify and Reduce Toxic Exposure to you. Lisa, Jason, take it away.
Well, thanks, Bobby, so much, and thank you, everybody, for attending today. We're really pleased that you're here, and I look forward to spending the next few minutes with you to introduce you to the ConneXt safety solutions and really discuss about wireless gas detection and how we can help you in your world of in the fire ground world. So, a little bit, just want to give you an overview of sort of what we're going to happen today. We're going to go through a little bit in the beginning here with Jason Crudson. As Bobby said, Jason's a great speaker, and looking forward to hearing from him a little bit. We're going to talk about atmospheric hazards in fire, including carcinogens and smoke and fireground airborne toxins. Look at some examples of some case studies as well, and then really talk about some of the solutions that are out there, including real-time detection, protection, and then really about the connected world that we live in and the connected first responder. As Bobby said, we'll have some wrap-up and Q&A at the end with Jason, myself, and Bobby. So we really look forward to an interactive discussion at the end. And thanks again for your time today. So I'm going to move the slide over and hand it over to Jason. Next slide's for you, Jason.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Bobby, and everybody joining in today. Always a pleasure. I appreciate Ray Systems for inviting me to speak today. As part of the FireSmoke Coalition, I'm able to get out and travel the country and spread the word, I guess, if you will, on the dangers of fire smoke and what we can do as first responders to be able to better inform ourselves or each other on the dangers of fire smoke, and then more importantly to protect ourselves. be safer and live hopefully a longer, happier life, especially post-career. So thank you. Starting here with really looking at the atmospheric hazards, there's a lot of information, just a wealth that's really coming to the forefront, and with the help of people like fire engineering for getting that information out and being able to disseminate that and really educate firefighters. And it's important that we understand the dangers when we go into these fires and understand what the smoke is and really what makes up the smoke. And we like to try and dissect it and really look at what's in the smoke. And there's a lot of things, and through basic just firefighter 1 training, we learn about the products of combustion, we learn about phases of fire, and then it really gets into the let's go out and put the hands on the tools and learn some of the tactics. And I think sometimes we skim over the important stuff and what dangers that we expose ourselves to. And it's not just the physical hazards that we can see around the fire ground or the actions or reactions of the actions we do, but it's also just the environment that we put ourselves into. And sometimes it's stuff that we can't see. So when we look at the atmosphere that we're in, whether it's inside a structure or just around the actual fire scene, those dangers are out there. And people most commonly talk about carbon monoxide as a primary contributor, and a lot of the dangers and the outcomes are as a result of that, but there's a lot more out there. There's things like hydrogen cyanide also that we look at. It's not just those two. We concentrate on those two and talk a little bit about that, why we look at those two specifically, but there's so many more. A lot of products out there that really have not really become new, but more prevalent and definitely in quantity. It's important that we look at them because of the changes in our building construction and the way things happen. And most people think that with new technology and increases in what we've learned in our information and being able to learn about stuff, early detection and monitoring, everybody has a fire protection system or a monitoring system, even in residence. So we're getting them earlier, but the things that are in the buildings that are burning, just so much different today than they were in years past, and just so many more synthetic. So we're adding just chemicals, in the raw product, in the material that's in the house, and then when we heat it up and it subjected to fire elements, the products that are released just really become very dangerous and make the smoke itself just that much more problem. So it's important that we look at those and we look at the toxicants that we subject ourselves to. So we have to make sure, especially in an enclosed space, that we protect ourselves and we wear air. And for the most part, firefighters do a pretty good job of wearing air during the actual firefighting, during the ignition of the fire, the actual attack. But once the fire is placed under control and we see the threat of the fire go away, then we have an issue with our firefighters becoming a little more comfortable and letting our guard down and removing air to the point where we're subjecting ourselves to those toxicants that are out there. So it's important that when we're in that we make sure that we ventilate and that we stay on air until we've actually been able to look at the atmosphere and make sure that we protect ourselves. So cyanide can act independently. It's not there, just like carbon monoxide, vice versa, or any of the other gases that are out there. So we have to make sure that we are knowledgeable of that and make sure that if we're going to remove our air and we're going to make sure that that atmosphere is safe, we have to have some type of technology. No more is the day of saying that it looks clear or it's okay. We have to confirm that, and we do that through technology and monitors to be able to check the atmosphere to make sure that it is safe. So that is definitely an important issue when we're dealing with the atmosphere. Looking at it and what the problems are we start to see that the smoke impacts us. and not just us as responders. And we assume that we're okay because we have PPE, but if we don't use it, then it's not giving us any added protection, anything different than what the citizen would have that was subjected to the elements prior to our arrival. So the smoke is going to impact us, and we know that because we can look at numbers, we can look at firefighter illnesses, injury, and deaths, and those are increasing. I mean, we talk about the line of duty deaths, and we typically average about 100 firefighters. And I listened to a great talk this week on Fire Engineering Radio that if we didn't go to any structure fires, we would still kill, 80-some firefighters this year because we're doing it other ways. But we're not just losing firefighters line of duty. It's several days after we go to a fire. It's several weeks or months after we retire. We're subjecting our bodies to a lot of toxicants, and luckily science, and there's a lot of research being done to look at what we're being subjected to on a daily basis as a firefighter, both not only inhalation but absorption, what we're carrying around on our gears, our gear, how do we need to clean that gear and maintain it, our uniform, and showering and making sure we do a personal decon when we return back to the station. So it's definitely important that we look at it because those numbers, and we have strong data that shows that we as firefighters as a profession, whether we're paid or volunteer, we're still seeing an increase in those that fight fires with particular cancers and other illnesses. But cancer is really coming to the forefront now, and it's getting a lot of exposure, and rightfully so, because we're really taking a hit as a profession on what dangers we're being put in through. So it's definitely important. And when we look at the data, we can see that we're more likely as a person, whether we're a firefighter or a civilian, when we're subjected to the elements of fire, we're much more likely to succumb to the dangers of smoke versus that thermal insult. So the numbers aren't lying, and it's definitely consistent. I mean, we're losing 3,000 to 4,000 people a year in fires. Far more many, 20 to 30,000 are injured or suffer injuries as a result of fires. So as a nation, that's pretty high. And as a service, as somebody responding there, sometimes it's a little alarming that we see firefighters getting transported for smoke inhalation. So we know we're not wearing our gear as much as we should, our PPE, and not only just wearing the SCBA on our back, but making sure that we use the face piece as well to complete that ensemble to make sure that we're using that resource. So the results of failing to properly protect ourselves and inform our firefighters, our fellow firefighters, of the dangers of the fire smoke, we're really running a risk, and that risk is really coming to light with more technological advances in medicine, being able to recognize this, and fortunately, I guess if we can look at it that way, is we're able to pick up on some of these earlier on and learn more about it. But we have to look at that and say we need to make sure we protect ourselves, and we learn from those that have already gone through that and learned, sadly, from having those cancers, how we can prevent that. And that's really done by making sure we look at the atmosphere, that we monitor, we wear our PPE and prevent an exposure, but then it doesn't stop on the fire scene. We have to go back. We have to care for our gear. We have to maintain it, properly clean it, and as well as our work uniforms and our bodies, and make sure that we do a decon, we shower, and we clean up. So not to go down the wrong way too much, keeping it in line with the atmospheric monitoring side, is we need to look at those environments. So this here is just a quick example of a dumpster fire. And I use this in my presentations. It's really a good example, and it was an accident. We were looking at monitoring at structure fires. We went to several fires and went to a dumpster fire one day back when I was on the truck, and I had the pleasure of responding to calls. We went to a fire, and my crew was putting out the fire, and as they were doing that, I grabbed the meter and stood there at the truck and we registered all the way up to 25 parts per million. So that really opened our eyes that it's not just in the structure and it's not just in the smoke, it's the atmosphere around that area, that those gases, the CO, HCN, aldehydes, oxides of nitrogen, I mean, there's hundreds of gases that are out there that we're not going to be able to see. They're going to move farther and faster from the particulate that's coming off of the fire, and we're going to be in it. And an old adage that you hear firefighters say is, well, I'm not in the smoke, I don't need to be on air. And that doesn't hold true anymore. And through technology, we're able to actually look at the atmosphere and see some of the things that we can't see with our eye. So metering definitely plays a big part now on the fire ground, not only in an overhaul situation, which is not uncommon, but even just on the fire ground before any actions are taken for a post like overhaul situation. So there's definitely a use for those things there. So in this one, we didn't even put it in the smoke. It was just standing where you see it in the picture. It never moved any closer, and it was alarming to see the readings. As I said, we look at CO and HCN, not to say they're the only two, but they are prevalent. And when we look at those, the reason we tend to, I guess, focus on those two is if we're exposed to those two, we have some way to be able to treat and hopefully reverse the effects immediately, not maybe undo any damage that's done, but we can at least try to improve the outcome of the patient. So if we know we can fix what's broken or maybe what's injured and some of the issues that come along with those, then why not look at those two? But I'm definitely an advocate for looking for as much as we can. We can use PIDs and other detection out there that will allow us to see beyond those. But I would definitely say if you're going to start monitoring on the fire ground, HCN and CO, having those sensors is definitely a great starting point. It's going to give you a good idea, a good picture of what's happening. And then also from the standpoint of a treatment, if we were to have somebody, a civilian that we had, it's going to give us some indication of what those levels are. So that is definitely a good starting point. Another example, this was basically just a pot on the stove call. You can see in the picture there that we ran. And I think this is probably, I guess, the snake in the grass that's going to get us. As firefighters, we go to these. It's a typical call, pot on the stove or a small kitchen fire. A lot of times maybe extinguished upon arrival, and we have a very light smoke condition. So we assume that since there's no fire, there's no danger. And the smoke, while it may not be thick, those incipient fires there, those small fires, are going to produce a wealth of gases, not smoke, but gases. And those gases, COHCN, all the others, aldehydes and oxides of nitrogen, I mean, there's hundreds of them out there. But those are out there, and they're just free in the air. And we go walking in with our guard down, expecting that the danger's gone, not realizing what we're doing. So in this case, we had an elderly occupant that was situated upstairs in the living space. And fortunately for them, they stayed there with the door shut. We arrived and we did a quick ventilation. We actually removed the victim via the outside, so did not have to bring him in through the smoke, and then immediately began monitoring while ventilating and had really significant readings for very little, if any, smoke at all. So that was a surprising call for us. So it's definitely an eye-opener once you start monitoring on the fire ground, in the fires, post-extinguishment, overhaul, post-overhaul. It's definitely going to be an eye-opener. And then here, we don't think much about it, but our command, like most firefighters, everybody wants to be in the fire, and if not in it, definitely close to it. So making sure that we take and place those non-essential personnel, and I say non-essential, those that aren't actively engaged in that attack, that initial attack and search function or ventilation, the on-deck companies or your RIT team, incident command, those staging, safety officers, those personnel need to be cognizant of the area that they're in and that they're staged in a safe location. Not to say they have to be a block away, but they need to be in a location where they're not in the smoke and they're not subjecting themselves to it. And it's also going to help remove them and free up that actual fire ground, the workspace, so people aren't having to negotiate around them. Something we started doing, commanding from the vehicle. It also helps not only provide a nice soundproof environment, but it keeps them in a kind of a safe place, and it makes them think that, well, if I have to stay in the vehicle, I have to be in a place I'm not going to impede any apparatus getting into the scene. So that helps, and that's just up to the department how they're going to run that. But it definitely, I can tell you, it works for us. It helps in many aspects, and one of those just being that it ensures that environment where they're in is safe, keeping them in the car. So using technology, and Lisa's really going to hit on this in a little bit, but having that meter there and maybe doing some wireless technology will help inform the incident commander what's going on without actually having to be right there in the yard or up at the house. So it gives them kind of that bird's eye view. So that's definitely another added bonus to that. Then lastly, I like to call this our Achilles heel because I think everybody's guilty of this, at least at one point in their career, is, as you see pictured here, firefighters operating without the PPE, especially during that overhaul situation where the fire's just recently knocked down. And again, we think the threat is gone, the fire being the adversary, and not realizing that the smoke is dangerous, that is also our enemy, and we're letting our guard down, and now we start stirring up particulate, all the insulation and debris that's there. We still have the particulates. We have light smoke conditions, and definitely with the heat, just the heat, not the fire, but the heat still continues to cause off-gas of whatever product may be either had been on fire or in close proximity of it, is still continuing to off-gas. So it's definitely important that during that phase that we make sure we protect ourselves, keep our SCBA on until we can confirm that the atmosphere that we're working in is safe. So this is going to conclude me, and I think we're going to go to a video now, a brief video, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Most of us don't have a full understanding of the chemicals that we are exposed to every day.
All the different chemicals that are in the fire gases, and 20 years from now, all our brothers are going to have cancer, our sisters are going to have cancer, and we're going to be like, why?
You wouldn't even think the smallest little fires we go to, the amount of hydrogen cyanide that's in it, it's definitely a scary thing.
A 12-inch little TV, little black smoke came off the back of it. Our CO monitor maxed out at 499. The HCN was at 49. It maxed out. Air pack's going to be worn every time. It's nasty stuff.
All right, great, and thanks, Jason, so much for setting up the beginning portion of our webinar. I appreciate it, and we'll get kind of going to the next section. So you saw a short video about where your air. That's an important component here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about monitoring and so forth as we get into the next section. So we wanted to bridge three different challenges that we are finding out in the fire ground. So really these are related to safety, communication, and knowledge. Safety is an important and very critical to firefighters, obviously. But with in terms of gas detection, where we're focused today is really looking at today and yesterday's gas detection typically is more reactive, right? So you hear a beep and you need to do something. So what we're doing is we're going to address that today and talk a little bit about how wireless can really enhance the safety aspect of gas detection. Communication obviously is really critical as well. Knowing what's in the smoke, where and who's down, just really being able to communicate those hazards or potential hazards real time is really important. And having that information, if you don't have it, could change the game a little bit. But having communication and having the communication ability really will enhance your SOP. As far then that kind of relates into knowledge. Information is power, right? Knowing what's going on at the incident, what's happening, projecting out what's going to happen from a community standpoint. Minimizing any risks of exposure. So we'll talk a little bit about those three critical areas today. So really, I think we talk about real-time safety information, and again, relating this back to gas detection, right? So, some of the questions that we look at, and we're going to kind of pose today are, one would be, how do I get information in real time from anywhere in the fire ground with respect to toxic or combustible gases? So, where we're focusing and where we're headed with our technology here at Honeywell Analytics is really focusing on wireless gas detection. So really having information at your fingertips and able to transmit that back to an incident commander is really important to have that to determine those readings in real time. Firefighters down, where could they be? Again, with wireless and advances in technology, a lot of the monitors out there now are starting to incorporate things called man-down alarms. So you're actually able to detect if the person has gone down, and then through wireless, you can actually then get that information real time again. And then locating where they're at is really important. And then, where is the problem? Physical location. So gas detection monitors can potentially identify where those readings are coming from in a location or in a zone, and those can be set up and so forth. So that's another area. What's airborne and what are the concentration? Again, having that real-time information at your fingertips or giving that information to a support team and so forth is really critical. What about a multi-alarm fire? What if you were able to communicate data with other first responders? So if you had multiple units being brought together to respond to a significant incident, nowadays with technology, you've got gas detection, you've got bringing that together with software, all sorts of really great tools that can come together to give you that information is really powerful. And when you need to make critical decisions to help protect your fireground, your firefighters, and the community, with multiple units coming together, multiple communities or cities or multiple fire departments, is really important to get that information together. And also look at what areas need to be evacuated first. You can set up hazard zones and so forth with wireless, and really as the winds and the environment shifts and changes, again, having that information to make critical decisions is real time. And then we talked a little bit about man-down situations. So again, technology has really come a long way, and it's exciting to kind of see, continue where it's evolving. So, we think the solution is in wireless gas detection. It's really kind of, it's great. It's great. Again, as I mentioned, technology can really enhance what you do for your safety program. And you really look at technology today. We were talking a little bit earlier about just, how things are evolving so quickly. And you may have heard of the term Internet of Things, IoT. So really what that is people are wanting to tie information from everywhere and anywhere at real time. So thinking about your connected devices, your connected home now, you may have a wireless thermostat, a wireless security alarm system. You've got all sorts of sensors now being built into different consumer products, and that's a natural progression now into the real world for a working world and the connecting the entire world from and looking in the fire ground. So we're looking at how many connected devices will there be? The Gartner Group says about 26 billion by the year 2020. That's not far away, guys. So that's critical to see how things are going to be changing rapidly. And so what we see and anticipate is all these connectivity, connected devices is going to lead to improved safety, security, and potentially loss prevention. And what we're hearing too from first responders are saying that they need that information delivered to mobile devices. Right, and you're out in the field, you need to be able to respond, have information transmitted to and from vehicles on scene or at a station, wherever they are, 24/7. So I really think really looking at the connected world and really kind of seeing how that translates into the fire ground is really important. And then, as I mentioned, gas detection is evolving. From the early canary days all the way to where we're today. We've come a long way, and for those that have been in the fire service a long time, you've certainly seen a lot of changes. For those that are newer, a lot of folks that are newer to the fire ground, they may be seeing technology as kind of more of a natural thing, but things are evolving quickly. And where we see gas detection, kind of on a scalability scale, we've given it here. We call it a maturity level, really, from a gas detection and a safety program. So really kind of think about where you're at today and where your station or your SOP is at, and think about where you want to go. So a lot of times you have just having the basic compliance, the traditional meters that you need for basic rescue, confined space, that sort of thing. Those are really what we call more reactive, which are obviously a great thing to have and critical, and that is gets you kind of get you that baseline level. You can actually go up the scale then to really what we call preventative, which is a little bit more elevated safety, where you start to get more connected solutions. I really think of that as people now using things like docking stations, really connecting devices together to give you the information after the fact or in real time. So preventive is just kind of the next step from there. Then on up to proactive. So you're looking at really more taking things to a different level, potentially getting into the wireless situations where you're bringing information real time into software, making things a little bit more automated. So I think proactive is a natural state, and then on up to advanced. So advanced safety is really, where we see it evolving to really more into like predictive operations. So really kind of taking the tools and the data that you get from different incidents and really starting to understand what the trends are, what's happening, and what you can learn from that. So what you can help to modify your safety plan going forward. So we see that as a great area to continue to look for, and evolving software is a huge play here. And I see only a lot more changes in the future from both the community and from Honeywell in general. So from there we look at what is the type of hazards that you can have. We've got several different things here that we talk about. We talk about responder health, confined space entry. Hazmat is obviously one that we're very familiar with. Overhaul operations, as Jason mentioned a little bit earlier. Fire ground monitoring and incident response. So, we've got all those here at Honeywell. Really those are areas that are pretty commonly used for gas detection. And the hazards are listed here up at the top right. You're looking at oxygen deficiency, toxicity and toxic gases, combustible or flammable gases, potentially particulates, if it's a dust-prone area. We've got radiation monitors, that's an area to look at, and also physiological stress. So what's actually happening to the firefighter, during a scene. So that's some of the areas that we can offer protection for and detection. So The next slide I wanted to go back to here. Sorry about that one. So when we kind of take a look at three different sort of scalable solutions, really taking a look at both the fire ground, fire overhaul, and hazmat response are really three different critical areas that we see a lot of play for wireless gas detection. So first and foremost is in the fire ground. So, current situation, if you've just got a monitor that goes beep, how do you confirm that the operator is safe? So by using the connected solutions with wireless, you've got now the option where one person's actually using the monitor and you've got a second person, usually the chief or the captain, actually monitoring what's happening remotely, and they can see real time what's happening in that situation and as it changes, and they can make appropriate decisions for that as well. So that's really important. And another area is fire overhaul. We talk about, again, knowing what's happening real time, having the safety officer knowing what the exposure levels. We talk about, wearing your air. That's really, really critical. So by having that information at your fingertips and transmitted back to a command zone or command center is really, really, I think, critical information to have. And then hazmat response. So again, response teams are looking at possibly a wide location. They could or could not have visibility by the team leader. So you're out there trying to determine your perimeter zone. So I think using gas detection is a real great way to incorporate software with gas detection together into real-time location and exposure data. So from there, we just really want to kind of talk about, as Jason mentioned earlier, it's really important to develop really a culture of safety in your fire department. So I think it's really important about looking about protection, looking at detection for first responders, how to track them in real time. Knowing what's in the smoke in real time, what's there, what's in it, what are the quantities. Jason pointed out that great example of the dumpster fire, right? So they were clearly not very close by, but in the atmosphere there was a huge amount of HCN. So knowing where it's coming from and being able to set limits for that is really important. And then mutual aid, as I mentioned, working with surrounding fire departments to share that information in real time. And we've had examples of that, of different communities that work together to come together and share their information for a response during real time through software so that they can communicate and make decisions together that help the community and help the firefighters. So we'll quote here from the Aurora, Illinois Fire Department. Don David said, "Wireless detection monitoring provides real-world benefits. Long term, he believes that detection monitoring will move entirely to wireless for response teams. Basically, it's a force multiplier." And I think really where he's getting at is just taking that where we're at today to the next level to incorporate technology. It really gives a powerful information to first responders to make really critical decisions, and being able to share that information is really I think a really good thing. So one of the solutions Honeywell Analytics offers, it's really unique on the market, is called the ConneXt Pack. So this is actually a really turnkey off-the-truck type of solution that's wireless and incorporates a multiple up to 4 different confined space monitors and or a multi-gas meter like the multi-ray together with a EchoView host, which is really a portable controller reader that can actually give you that information about what's happening real time. And the great thing about something like this is a really entry-level wireless system, so that there's no software needed in this instance. It's actually it's all wireless, but no software is necessary. You've got all the information being transmitted real time to that command controller. And up to 8 devices can send a signal to that controller. So it's a great entry and portable way to get into gas detection. It's wireless. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's other hazards that that could be monitored or that need to be monitored. Jason touched on just a few earlier as well. Beyond the typical flammable and combustible gases, oxygen and CO. There's other things that we can take a look at today with multi-gas monitors incorporating a lot different sensors in them. Potentially have a photoionization detection for real low-level VOCs, which is great. Ray systems can detect hundreds of different VOCs in a fire ground and give you that information. As we said, there's a lot more to smoke now that we're knowing and realizing. Area monitoring is a really critical one. Again, if you've got a hazmat situation where you need to understand where the perimeter is, so area monitoring can be critical and incorporate multi-sensors as well. A lot of sensors and technology for gas detection also incorporates location monitoring, so identifying a zone where the firefighter is at and being able to determine a perimeter and a safe zone is really critical. So location's that's a good component of wireless. Plume monitoring, so you can incorporate weather stations to incorporate determining movement of a plume with different types of software. So there's a lot of advances there. And then the last two really being more unique in dust and physiological monitoring. So particulates and or physiological, knowing the hazard and the health status of the worker. That's a really unique way to incorporate that into gas detection. A lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of folks are using more the automated calibration and bump testing units nowadays. That's an advance that wasn't around 10 years ago. So again, technology continues to evolve and provide a lot of great new solutions for folks. So automated calibration and bump testing that could actually be stored on a vehicle, on a response vehicle, and easy to get to, and really get you that monitor up and running quickly. And then mobility, so having that information accessible through either a laptop or a smartphone or a tablet is really critical, and all of that is incorporated into what we call our ConneXt solution. Data logging for incident recovery afterwards, if you're needing information real time, that information is always going to be stored and accessible for after the fact for reporting and so forth. So automated data logging is a huge feature for our ConneXt Plus solution. And then lastly, as I mentioned, laptops and tablets with our ProRay Guardian software. Just another example from Denver Fire. We've done a lot of work in the Denver metro area, and Mike said that wireless gas detection is really an important step in protecting firefighters and civilians by having somebody that's not in the IDLH atmosphere watching over them, keeping an eye on what's going on and alerting them to what we have in a type of emergency. So again, as I kind of mentioned, it's kind of having that backup person keeping an eye on the situation, and they've realized the importance and what they can get from a wireless solution. So kind of just a little bit of a summary, but technology is continuing to evolve. I think there's going to be more on the horizon. I think fire engineering is a great resource for continuing to see where technology is evolving. Honeywell Analytics is really at the forefront of this, and in really all firefighter protection. And we're looking at a lot of different solutions that we can provide to the first responder that ultimately benefit the community, overall department, and the city and the folks where people live. And some pictures here. I actually have a picture here of our laptop with our remote access for the tablet or a smartphone, so you can get a picture of what that looks like. Or down the bottom right, you could actually have this back at a command zone or a vehicle or in a department headquarters as well. So, a couple questions that we hope we've kind of started to address. If not, we'd be happy to during questions. But, when is it safe to take my mask off? That's an important question that we educate people on every day. And the hazards of both carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide, are they double trouble? Oh, we already know that. So there's a lot of tools out there that can help you answer these questions, and hopefully you'll take a look at what we have to offer. As I mentioned, just kind of in summary, the toxic twins are likely to be present in the fire ground in appreciable amount, so having detection, real-time information to see what's happening, even when you think it's safe to go in, is really important. And time and information are critical. So how do you get your monitor readings real-time and make decisions? By having gas detection that's wireless, getting that information at your fingertips, and sharing that information is really critical. So Ray Systems delivers a lot of different types of wireless monitors that you can take a look at for making those real-time decisions that are 24/7 and have that information shared across the fire ground. So just kind of the last summary, I showed you these three wheels in the very beginning of the slide deck, but just really to kind of summarize, going from a reactive to a more proactive safety program with wireless gas detection can potentially reduce health risks and long-term exposure to toxins. You know, we're really dedicated to providing those tools that can keep our firefighters out there safe and retire and live a long, healthy life. So providing safety and really being more proactive is really something that we feel strongly about. Communication and knowledge, I believe, kind of go hand in hand, but really, again, having that information 24/7, to make decisions, incorporating perhaps a man-down alarm and any other type of visible airborne toxics or toxins wirelessly is really, giving you that information to make critical decisions. So I think technology can help you get to all of these places a little quicker, and there's a lot of ways to go about it. As I mentioned, they're real scalable solutions, so there's great ways to test it out and see if it works for your department. So in summary, I just want to say kind of at the end here, but we'll take some questions in a moment, but thank you for sharing the last hour with us or so. We really know that you guys take the time, or really appreciate you take the time out for your day to do this. My email and some information for where to go is on the slide deck here, and the slides will be available to you after the call as well. That's it from the slide presentation for me, but I wanted to hand it over to Bobby, and we'll take some questions here, I think, right? Okay?
Yeah, great job. Great job, Lisa. That was very well done, and thank you very much. We've got quite a few questions rolling in here, so we'll get right to them so we can keep on schedule here. This first one's for you, Lisa. We're going to bring you right back. It said, you talked about mobile internet access and wireless gas detection information. And so the question is, can the wireless system be accessed by virtually anybody, like our commanders back at the station, or say like a regional incident command system or area command, or back at our dispatch? And how does that work?
Right, so we utilize what we call our Prairie Guardian software, and that software is sort of the backbone for all of what we've talked about today. And that software can be viewed on a laptop. It could be used, housed in the command vehicle. It could be also viewed on any tablet or smartphone. And alternatively, as I mentioned, we've got the EchoView host, which is another way of transmitting that wireless signal for those gas monitors up to 8 different devices on a handheld reader that is intrinsically safe. So you've got the option to really have different varying ways to read the data, which I think is critical.
Outstanding. Another question came in about the recommendation to use gas monitors. Again, Lisa, this is for you and Jason. But the question was about using gas monitors during overhaul, which is critically important, but sometimes misunderstood by many firefighters about how much danger is still around during overhaul. You want to talk a little bit more about why it's so important to be using gas detection even post flame and firefighting?
Yeah, I'd like Jason to answer that. He's
sure
one of the experts here. Go ahead.
So gas detection is definitely we're just seeing it more and more, becoming just a staple item, no different than any other tool that we use on the fireground, like a thermal imager or hooks or irons, just not during the active firefighting. Once the fire's out, we've done ventilation, beginning the overhaul. A lot of times they're overlapping, but pretty much the benchmark that we use and what we see in my department and what we see in a lot of departments is once ventilation is nearing the end and the atmosphere looks good, then we go in and use the metering as a confirmatory to actually say, yeah, it's good, and it really helps out the ladder companies or the people doing the support functions of ventilation and overhaul and some salvage work to say, is the atmosphere I'm in really good, and is it safe to come off air? So there's some fires that are just smoky and nasty and stubborn, a lot of hot spots, and we stay on air a long time, and there's a lot of times we get in, we get a quick knockdown on it, and it's not really a big fire and quick ventilation, and we're able to come off air earlier on. So it's another tool, and it definitely helps in letting us know, but we're definitely not going to monitor during firefighting or even as soon as we put a knock on it. So it's just a learning process, but it's definitely a tool. And most departments, the great thing about it is they already have these meters. It's not anything that's foreign to them or requires them to go out and buy a whole new widget.
Right. Most departments have been carrying gas detection meters for at least 30 years that I know of. But here's an interesting question from Kelly Smith. And Kelly says, when we're talking about hydrogen cyanide, hydrogen chloride, what levels are we looking at to where we feel it's safe, safe to take off our masks?
Well, that's a common question that I get. I guess, first of all, it's up to each department to determine what they're going to use for their levels. We can use a lot of the scientific, like NIOSH recommendations, and go to that point. What we tend to see, though, at fires, at least here in Columbia, by the time we go in and we're ventilating or monitoring, that ventilation is not necessarily completed, but we ventilated a majority of that smoke, the particulate, the visible stuff. So now we're going in to just confirm it, and we're really seeing very, very low numbers, if not zero, on most of our stuff, because we know that we've rid that confined space or the structure of the particulate and the smoke and the other gases that are there. We're going in. So, if you're going in and monitoring early on during ventilation or before, you're going to see high numbers. You're going to max out your meter, and you really just end up beating those things up and saturating them to the point where you're going to have a maintenance issue of doing that. So to answer the question, I guess, is realistically, if we're monitoring post-ventilation or towards the end of ventilation, we really see very, very low numbers.
Excellent. Outstanding. I guess this one would go to, Jason, you and Lisa might be able to answer this for us. How fast can the multi-pack unit get deployed once you hit the fire ground?
So I think I could take that, and Jason, you could back me up on this one too. So we have the ConneXt pack, as I mentioned, and that's I think what they're referring to in the multi-pack. So how fast can that be deployed and up and running? So really, it's a matter of about a minute. It's just a matter of powering up the units, turning them on. Cycle through takes about a minute, and out of the box immediately they connect wirelessly to the controller. And so again, they're really seamless, and it's very, very fast. So I'd say within about less than 5 minutes you're up and running.
And I guess the only thing I would add is that while we use them in the structure, as I said, in the post ventilation, kind of into that overhaul phase of the event, we want to encourage that firefighters use them on the fire ground. So as Lisa said, deploy them early, get them out. The pump operators, your RIT teams, your on-deck companies, your incident commander, they can keep them there with them, and then they're out, they're deployed, they're running. It's providing them some information. It may not, or hopefully it's not getting any readings because they're in a safe location. But if the wind changes or they're kind of getting tunnel vision in their tasks they're doing, it's kind of a little wake-up alarm for them while they're doing outside functions. And then once they're ready to go into that overhaul phase and start monitoring, they're there, they're on the scene, they're not back in a compartment on a piece of apparatus. They're out and they're there either on a command post or some crew or personnel that are on the scene.
Jason, that was interesting because you just mentioned, moving around on the fire ground. What's the range on a wireless gas monitor? Do you know, or Lisa, do you know what's the range on one of these monitors? How far can they transmit?
Yeah, well, the answer is it sort of depends on what, which type of units you're using. The distances, can go up to 2 miles depending on, again, if you're using like the Area Ray or some of our long-range products. So it sort of depends. They can go, from 150 feet on up, so it's real scalable. As I mentioned, you can start with a real entry level model on the way up to a larger type of deployment.
Outstanding. Are these monitors GPS enabled, or does anybody know? Lisa, do you know if they're GPS enabled?
Yeah, not all of them are. We do have some units that do have GPS incorporated into them.
Outstanding. This one, Jason, this one's throwing it right at you, buddy. It says, we take classes in reading smoke. Why can't we just take classes in reading hydrogen cyanide?
Well, you can. The FireSmoke Coalition offers classes every month across the country. We've even been to some of our neighboring countries. And it goes really in depth on everything from a general awareness to smoke and looking at what's in the smoke and how it affects us physiologically, but then what can we do to better prepare ourselves as responders in protecting ourselves, being aware of it and using things like atmospheric monitoring. So we do that every month. So I definitely encourage, if you are interested in attending those training, they're free classes. We do them every month. And if you go to firesmoke.org, it'll tell you where we're going to be throughout the rest of the year. And we're actually working on 2016. So that is definitely an option.
And I think this ties into this next question. It says, how do we get our nearby mutual aiders to participate in using wireless gas detection equipment so, everyone can work together and better protect ourselves? I think Jason just said, if you bring education in with the Smoke Coalition and training, that's one of the best ways to do that. What do you think,
Definitely.
Jason?
Yeah, if somebody has it or they're doing it, is to educate their neighboring agencies. The mutual aid companies are running with, or somebody in the next county over, or through regional training or at state training facilities, is let them know that they have that capability and market themselves and say, hey, we will come do atmospheric monitoring for you if you have the equipment, is offer to help them out, or vice versa. No different than a lot of counties or areas are going to regional RIT teams, having companies that are specially equipped with some of the stuff to be able to come in and work at a large fire. We can have companies just like that come out and provide that resource of air monitoring at a fireground.
The next question is kind of interesting, and I want to bring Lisa back in because it goes to what we're doing right now. Well, we're with UL, Illinois Fire Institute, Skidmore College, a bunch of folks are down in Illinois right now looking at biometrics, basically looking at the effects of smoke and gas and heat on firefighters' physiology. In other words, how is our body reacting? How much are we absorbing? And so this person asked, does any of the equipment we were talking about here today, the wireless systems we're talking about, possibly log or identify any of the firefighters' biometrics? Do we look at body temp and things like that with any of this equipment?
So we do have a unit called the BioHarness that we can use on our wireless network, and it does measure different physiological components, including posture and heart rate and so forth. So definitely we've used that in different instances in the past where we've actually recognized in one particular case where the individual actually had a heart instance where he needed medical attention and was able to get medical help, and that actual use of the bioharness actually probably ended up saving his life. So so there is a method to do that, and we do offer that.
Now, when you say posture, does that mean that if a person's changed from, say, standing up to laying down, that would be identified in that data, or?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So,
that's
so
correct.
if we're crawling versus if we're walking?
Really, it's related more to like movement. If the person stopped moving, more like a man down feature.
Like
so
a lack of movement.
Lack of movement, correct.
Right. Because when you talk about posture, we go from standing to crawling to all kinds of stuff. So here's an interesting question, and this must be from one of our software guys. He's asking, on your ProRay Guardian software, does it share real-time instrument information? They're looking for a better description of the ProRay Guardian software that you described a little bit in your talk.
Okay.
And
well,
how it shares, and how it. Well, what they're asking is, can you give a better description of how the ProRay software shares real-time instrument information?
Okay. Well, I mean, again, the software is sort of the backbone to our gas detection system. It's the way that the instruments are gathered into the software to multiple units or multiple devices, so you can determine on the screenshot actually what's happening real time, not only with the meters. You can identify location. You can as I mentioned, you can bring in other different types of monitoring into ProRay Guardian, so you can determine, what the concentration levels are. You can determine what the gas detection readings are. You can determine, if there's an alarm, if it's a battery alarm, like if it's a low battery, you can determine that. And then, you can also, as I mentioned, for mutual aid, if you want to share that information, you need to have that internet access to be able to do that. But that is possible. So folks would need some sort of internet access and a mobile command type of situation in order to share that mutually.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hey, Jason, is there a way to measure and monitor the level of toxins in our PPE and in our hoods?
I would not. I don't think there's any definitive that would be something we could do like in the fire station when we get back. I mean, we can definitely put the meters up to it and see if we're getting, and gear does continue to off-gas hours and days later. So it's important that if we go into a smoky fire that we decon, basically clean the gear. No different than we should change a uniform and take a shower. But I don't think there's, or I should say, any cost effective without having anything that would tell us everything that's in it. But there are a lot of, studies, or there's a lot of attention getting put on gear as far as how clean is clean. One thing, and then how do we clean it? How do we make sure when we throw that gear in a gear extractor, when we take it out, that it's any cleaner, or how more clean is than it was when it got put in. So there's definitely a lot of attention, so that's good that people are starting to look at it. I've talked to a couple different people that are doing some research into that aspect as far, but I don't think there's anything like a swab test that we could come back and wipe our gear and instantly see what's in it or if it's needing. The best thing to do is just, as a presumptive precaution, come back.
I agree. Err on the side of caution. I haven't heard of any way to do that yet either, but I'm sure that somebody's working on it.
But it's definitely being looked into.
Yeah, I think we have time for one or two more questions. Here's an interesting one. Jason, you mentioned cancer rates are increasing in EMS. What do you attribute that to? Any theories there? It says in EMS.
No, if
I
did, I made a mistake. I apologize if I did. I don't know of any. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of fire-based EMS. That is, I apologize if I did. I don't know what would. I haven't really looked into that.
Well, good, because that question kind of threw me, and I said I don't remember that, but according to the person who asked the question, we'll have to.
I may have
get
said
that
first responders.
Ah, there you go. Okay. There you go, and they misunderstood you. Okay.
Right.
Okay, great. And then the final one I think we'll take today, it says that we've heard about some departments now monitoring and wearing air off the truck. In other words, they're bunkering up and putting their face pieces on in the truck. So do you recommend this as an SOP to a structure fire? Jason, where do you fall down on that?
Well, I don't know about wearing the air on the truck. I know some departments in going around the country, they're starting to have their personnel maybe put their face piece on, but really that's geographically that's got to change, time of year that's got to change. I mean, if you get off the truck in the Northeast and when it's cold out and you have a face piece on and you're not breathing air, you're going to fog up and trip over the curb before you even get to the house. So we have to look at that. I would more so like to see or have people doing things that make firefighters aware of where they need to mask up, not necessarily say you have to do it on the truck, is inform them to where they can make an informed decision to say, if it's a smoky fire and it's humid out, or it's a misty day and that smoke's banked down in the front yard, then you need to mask up out in the yard and go on air, versus not waiting to get to the front door, as we've trained firefighters in the past, is don't wait to get into the smoke to go on air. But I don't know about telling them mask up and go on air, or even mask up on the truck. But I think we need to educate the firefighters so they know where they need to mask up, and then help them make that informed decision to where they're not just using either wait till I get to the front door, or on the other direction of do it on the truck. So it's really, you really just have to inform them and not do it as a policy measure, I think. I think sometimes we do that too much. We want to make it easy, and from an administrative side, if we put it in black and white and say do it here, we tend to take the decision-making out of it.
Yeah, and I would, they asked me if I'd chime in there, and I would just say that I think masking up doesn't really provide you with any additional protection to an IDLH environment. In other words, I think the smart money is, if we have detection capabilities, if we establish detection capabilities, then we start to make that an exclusionary area for subsequent arriving units, and we get those people on air as fast as we can. But I'm not for people, putting their SCBA on inside the rig and their face piece, because it limits their vision, and then B, as you limit their vision, you limit their field of experience and what they can see and take in around the site, which is critical. Second to that, if the first arriving, if you want to do that with the first arriving, have them set out gas detection to identify where the IDLH is, that might be prudent. If we take the Providence case into mind, where we had people in the street who became cyanide toxic at the pump panel, I think there's a lesson to be learned there, that the IDLH might be further than just inside the building, like we've always believed. It may be further out from the structure, depending on a wide variety of variables, barometric pressure, wind direction, temperature, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have to start looking at all of those things, and there may be a time when we start to identify, like we identify collapse zones, IDLH areas where we want people to be on air, not just wearing their masks, but on air. So I think we're going to see a lot more people doing what we used to call reverse lays, and we used, and in some places back in the day called them forward stretches, where you actually dump your working hose and then you take your pumper to the hydrant rather than hooking to a hydrant and driving to the pumper. Driving to the fire. So you accomplish two things there. You take the operator of the apparatus out of the IDLH for sure. You create a quieter working environment, and you ensure that you're leaving the front open for ladder companies and things like that. And we got away from that with the pre-connects, because the pre-connects are limited in their stretchability to 200 or 150 feet, and so you have these people pulling up as close as they can to the building in order to make the pre-connects work. So we kind of reversed engineered our problem, and we've created a new problem in the interim. So I think that you're going to see people going back to, dumping their hose loads, going back to the hydrant, and that way we ensure that at least our driver operator is not going to have to run an unnecessary risk if the wind direction changes and they're not on air. Unless we want to start to have our pump operators and our ancillary personnel, wearing air at all times while they're within the proximity of a potentially IDLH area. So it's an interesting question. I think we're going to see a lot of variations on the theme there, but that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I think the easy way to look at it is to ask yourself, when you're standing on the fire ground, if the smoke were not smoke and it were a green toxic cloud, would you be standing where you're at and not being protected? And most people would either mask up or they'd change their location. We're not saying everybody has to run away or everybody has to be standing at the pump panel using an air pack, but think about it. You need to do one of those two. Change something. We can't always necessarily change the fire, especially if we're on the outside, but we can change our location, or we can change the PPE we're in. So sometimes outside work requires SCBA.
Well, that was a great job, you guys. We're up against a hard break, so I'd just like to thank Lisa and Jason very much. That was a wonderful job. Race Systems, fantastic. Please go to racesystems.com. What a wonderful sponsor they've been to Fire Engineering. We'd like to thank everyone who joined with us this afternoon. Again, please go to racesystems.com and see the great stuff that Race Systems and Honeywell are producing for the fire service. It's state-of-the-art, it's changing the way we do business, and it's keeping firefighters safer. Thank you for watching our presentation, The Invisible Danger and How to Utilize the Power of Wireless Gas Detection to Identify and Reduce Toxic Exposure. This will be archived within 24 hours and can be accessed from the homepage at fireengineering.com. We will send you a reminder if you registered, and we hope you did. We thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in the future, and thank you so much to Race Systems and our good friends Jason and Lisa for a wonderful job today on today's webcast. Bye-bye, and have a great day all. This is Bobby Halton from Fire Engineering, and we'll see you again next time.